Welcome to Twitch Tales. Back in episode 1. Apis was awoken from a dream. Apis is a Horizon Walker ranger, and was awoken from a dream of 3 years previous, where they were returning from a rather unsuccessful hunt back to their hometown of Shafgushal, and they discovered that Shafgushal had been attacked and destroyed by a large green dragon who lived in the nearby forest. For reasons unknown to Apis, Unguhef, this large green dragon, had attacked Shafgushal and destroyed the town, killed everybody in there, almost everybody in there. Apis found very few survivors and mostly just bodies. Lots of missing peoples that were assumed to have either fled or been eaten. It was not a good experience. Apis was recapping this as a bit of a nightmare when they woke in episode 1. They then discovered that as an outlander they live on the land, but they can only do so for so long before they need to head back to a town. And this is one of those mornings. They looked at their blankets and their rations and their arrows and realised they were kind of running out of each, and needed to patch up the blanket and things. And so they headed into a local town called Shadridge, a tiny little frontier town in the north of an island called Corintil. In Shadridge, Apis met up with their friend the baker, Franklin, and a few other people, Gretchen, who runs the Lucky Loot Inn, and various others, and resupplied with their rations and whatnot. While there, though, they were hearing a few indications that the mead had not been delivered recently from the guy who brews mead. So Apis headed to the meadery, the apiary, to find that the apiarist had died. He'd been killed in an attack by some goblins. Apis set off into the woods after the trail left by the goblins, and discovered them trying to steal a giant bee and several of the bees from the apiary. Apis killed these goblins and rescued these bees, one of which, the giant bee, made good friends with us and became our companion on this quest, a giant bee by the name of Mel. Apis heard that these goblins weren't alone in their attack. There were many other goblins nearby in the woods, so Apis went out to find and deal with these goblins, and one by one, picking them off in small groups, Apis managed to defeat almost all of the goblins. Heading back to Shadridge, Apis came across an elf in the woods and realised these elves might need warning about the goblins as well. So Apis introduced themselves, was taken back to the elves' village, where indeed they had been attacked by these goblins, and Apis offered to help them rebuild. Apis was introduced then to 3 other sister villages to this original village, making 4 total, and learned of the existence of the 4 sisters, four elven towns in the woods, one of which was not exactly friendly to outsiders. It's a town called Archel. They're diviners and soothsayers, foresight viewers, and all of the rest of it, and very racist towards non-elves. After helping the other 3 sisters for a while, Apis realised that there were plot hooks even further north, deeper into the woods, into an area of the woods called the Great Expanse. And that's when Apis decided, maybe that's for another day. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here at level 2 or 3 or whatever we were at the time. And so Apis turned around and left whatever was happening in the Great Expanse to be dealt with another time. And then Apis headed back to Shadridge. I should also mention, because it might become pertinent later today, but related to decisions about what to do, that while leaving the 4 sisters and heading back for Shadridge, there was also hints happening about Arachel, the racist village, starting to prepare for war with something. They had asked Munglofau, one of the other sister villages, to start producing weapons and armor en masse, in order to prepare for something that was coming, something that they had foreseen coming. Apis kind of went, well, that's not really my problem right now. I'm going to go deal with something else, and went back to Shadridge. Upon arriving in Shadridge, Apis discovered that there was a few issues in town. A couple of the older folk had started to die or get sick, get really, really weak and really ill, and thought that it was a suspicious timing that they should both have died in a similar fashion, especially because one of the cows on one of the nearby farms had died in a similar fashion, where they had been emaciated and weakened over the course of a few days and then died. Upon investigating this further, Apis uncovered that it was the cause of necromancy, in that there were shadows. The shadows of these people were torn away from them after death, and then would rise as undead creatures of their own, and then attack and sap at the life force and strength of various older folk until they succumbed as well, and then their shadow would rise and join the army. Thankfully, Apis managed to catch it relatively early, and so there were only about 4 or 5 deaths before Apis confronted and found and confronted the necromancer, a young woman called Sally, who was in charge of, responsible and behind all of these attacks for reasons unknown. Apis attacked and drove Sally out of town, who unfortunately escaped into the woods north of Shadridge to live another day. Apis went back to Shadridge and learned from the local guards there that the nearby large town of Fondue was not sending any resources anymore, which is strange because Shadridge is a frontier town and needs help from outside in order to establish itself and survive until it becomes self-sufficient. So their resources hadn't been arriving lately, and Apis was tasked with finding out why. On the road to Fondue, Apis discovered why, because they were attacked by bandits, and the bandits were working for a manticore. Reluctantly, under servitude and threat of death. Apis managed to band with the bandits and attack the manticore, freeing the bandits and reclaiming all of the resources that they had stolen on the way. They took them back to Shadridge and explained the deal, and then celebrated the first of the month, the first of Altebris. The first of each month is usually a holy day for the god to whom the month is dedicated. In this respect, it is the god of hunting, called Altemez. So in order to honour Altemez, the god of beasts and hunting, his place of worship is the menagerie. And so Shadridge, being a frontier town, does not yet have a menagerie, but on the first of Altebris was putting one together. So they asked Apis, as an efficient hunter, to go out into the nearby woods and find something exotic to put into the menagerie. And Apis did so, rolling exceptionally well and finding a Sasquatch, a particularly rare primate beast, essentially Bigfoot, and with some ingenuity managed to persuade this Sasquatch to follow them back to Shadridge and get into a pit voluntarily. But then the next morning, Sassy, as people have nicknamed this Sasquatch, Sassy discovered that they didn't like being in a pit, and when Apis decided, inexplicably, to climb down into the pit to hand feed the Sasquatch, Sassy used the opportunity to attack and escape the pit and run back to the wild. After that, and enjoying the rest of the day's festivities, Apis paid homage to Altemez, the god of the hunt, and by nature of being so successful in hunting a Sasquatch, Apis was presented with a sort of prophetic dream of sorts, and it affected the range of your hunter's mark ability from then on. You were sort of booned by the god of hunting. Then Kathleen, one of the knights of Kvosna, the guards of this town of Shadridge, gave Apis a note to say, can you take this to Fondue to explain to them everything that's happened here over the last few weeks. And so Apis did so. They went to Fondue, arrived at Fondue, but not before being encountered on the way by a couple of half-dragon rats and squirrels. Green dragon scales up the noses and bodies of these rats and squirrels. They explained this to the people of Fondue, a walled town of about 1,000 population or so. And the people of Fondurg said, that's peculiar and a bad omen, because it usually means that there's a green dragon somewhere in the forest nearby that's sleeping around with some animals. And Apis is about a 3-day walk north of where the green dragon is that killed their family and their hometown, so it shouldn't really be that one unless it was displaced for any reason. At that point, Apis spent some time around town, getting to know the town of Fondurg a little bit, getting to know where the hunting shops are and where the taverns and places to sleep are and that sort of thing. You met with a halfling gentleman calling himself the Fiend, who is the head of a criminal organisation here in Fondurg, particularly thieves and people who break and enter and intimidate, rob people, those sorts of nasties. Not exactly the Robin Hood kind of organisation. He offered you the opportunity to join once he realised you had certain skills. By this point, Apis has started to discover their powers as a horizon walker and has developed the ability to misty step and pass without a trace, and has been approached in their dreams by various different gods of the pantheon with interest in Apis. Apis has started to try and learn a little about what it means to be a Horizon Walker, but has discovered that Horizon Walkers are very rare. They are people who are born with particular abilities to manipulate the energies of the multiverse into their own powers and fighting styles and things. Knows very little about it even to this day. You met an archfey called the Merry Gentleman, as one of his names anyway, who tried to explain to you that Horizon Walkers are rare, and he has interest in you and your abilities, and he can teach you certain things if you come and visit him in the Feywild at some point. So that's another plot for you if you wish to take it at any point. Eventually, however, there is this as a dragon flies overhead, confirming everyone's fears, and lands outside of Fondurg and demands that the Fondurg champion come out to meet them and pay for their penance, killing the dragon's children, the rats and squirrels and whatnot. Fondurg sent out its greatest champion, a fighter by the name of Tauchu, and Tauchu was immediately ambushed by various different half-dragon creatures and killed. This was a warning from Lucifrique, the green dragon, who said, "I want one of your people sent out every dusk, and I want you to send them out with a treasure. And when I'm satisfied that your debt to me is paid, then we can move on," sort of thing. So the next night, it was decided that Apis, being kind of the one who was responsible for setting all of this off anyway by killing the dragon rat children, would be the one to go out as sacrifice. However, it would be in the form of an ambush. Apis would only be pretending to be tied up and would actually have an invisible bow and arrow with them, which they shot at the dragon and blah blah blah. However, it didn't go like that, because for the first time we realised that this green dragon is particularly intelligent and devious, and had instead asked for this Dusk Sacrifice as a distraction at the north end of town, while he instead picked off someone at the south end of town. This sort of deception continued for the next couple of days as people started going missing and getting attacked by the dragon and whatnot. It continued for a few days until Apis and their small druid friend named Briar set off into the Lannis Woods nearby Fondurg to try and do a reconnaissance mission and learn where this dragon lives and what sort of forces it has, and whether or not Fondurg can actually take it or not. Apis was once again outsmarted, however, and lulled into a trap in a pit. A dragon mole came up and pushed Apis over the ledge of a pit down into this ditch where the dragon could appear at the top of the pit, spread its wings out to prevent escape, and then make demands of Apis to hold out their hand to be bitten off in payment for all that they've done. Apis managed to smooth talk their way out of it, however, knowing quite a bit about dragons as Apis' favourite enemy. Apis managed to remember that dragons are particularly susceptible to flattery, And so Apis started complimenting this dragon's intelligence at outsmarting them and offering to serve them in servitude and all of this, and how they need their hands if they're going to be a useful servant to them, and blah blah blah. It worked enough to have the dragon decide to instead keep Apis as a prize, and so they took Apis back to their lair and stuck them in a huge vegetative dome along with a bunch of tree elves that they had found, and said, "You live here now. You are one of my prizes. You are one of my treasures in my treasure hoard." Apis spent the next few days getting to know their new living situation in this dragon's village. They during that time they got to know some of the elves. They learned that there was a necromancer living somewhere in the woods nearby, raising dead animals, and generally started to prepare for an assault at the dragon. Meanwhile, the town of Fondue had sent off to the king of the country that you're in, and the king had responded by sending a small contingency of about a dozen well-equipped fighters to tackle this dragon on Fondue's behalf. Apis every morning was getting a sending message from the local wizard Vala, who was telling Apis, just hold off a couple more days, try and weaken their forces if you can pick them off one by one or anything like that. Just hold out for a couple more days, the king's army are on their way, yada yada yada. Eventually, Apis was released from captivity when the king's army arrived and attacked. Apis joined that fight and managed to get the killing blow on Luciferique the Green Dragon just as he was escaping and fleeing to live to fight another day. Apis got a long shot hunter's mark thanks to Ultimas and their blessing. Hunter's mark, long shot arrow from the over the canopy of the trees, right through the back of the skull, and Luciferique fell. We managed to collect a couple of dragon parts from his body, including blood and some scales, and then we went to find his lair. We found where he keeps his treasure and found a bunch of gold and a quiver of seemingly endless arrows. And then head back to Fondue. Back at Fondue, we discovered that several of the people of Fondue were killed in the fight, including Vala, the wizard who'd been warning us the entire time, and that the local Druids Guild had enough herbs and salves and tinctures and whatnot to cast the Reincarnate spell on just one person. So there was a vote in town. At the town hall there was a vote on who should be resurrected, and it was decided that Vala, the local wizard, should be resurrected due to her power. She was reincarnated, given a new body in a ritual, and her new body, through random chance, I rolled on my table and got pretty much an identical body to the one she had before. So luckily for her, it shouldn't be too much of a discombobulating change than if she'd gone from human to dragonborn or something hugely different. Is that everything? Am I missing anything in particular that should be brought out, guys? Anything that I haven't mentioned? While we were in the Four Sisters Elven village way up north, we killed a Displacer beast, we skinned it and took it to a tanner, and they're going to make a Displacer's cloak for us, but it's in the works because it takes a long time to tan it, to turn it into a cloak, then to enchant the cloak. But in thanks for saving their town, that's in the works at the moment as well. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, birthday, yeah. It happens to be Apis's birthday right now as well. So for all of the people who are new, you've joined us at a great time. Way back when, at some point in the long history, we rolled on a random table to see when Apis's birthday was. Although we didn't roll, we voted in chat, didn't we? I give everybody a shot of my calendar, the calendar that I use for my world. 8 days in a week, 4 weeks in a month, 12 months in a year. And I said, these are all the months, these are who they're dedicated to, yada yada yada, does Apis want a summer month, a summer birthday, winter birthday, blah blah blah. And we decided on Apis's birthday, and then it's finally gotten around to it in game. It is now Apis's birthday. They are 54 years old, which for a dwarf is developmentally about the same as a 26-year-old human. So they are they're still young, still very much a young person. They're in sort of the prime of their life, as it were, and will be for another like 30 years as a dwarf. I forgot to mention that Lucifreak, the green dragon that captured us, was the son of Unguhef. We discovered while we were captive with him that it was his father that killed our whole family in our town and everything. And he, being that he's now an adult, was kicked from the nest, as it were, and had to go and find his own place to live, which is why he turned up to the north, about 3 days' journey to the north in the Lannis Woods. He had a vendetta against his father, which was one of the things we used to try and persuade him to let us join him. We were like, hey, we hate your father, you hate your father, let's work together to kill him. And then we turned on him. Alright, so where we left off... one big thing that's going to come up probably that I should have mentioned is that during all of that time, way back up in Shadridge, near the start of the game, we discovered some dice, some bone dice. I've got a physical representation of them here. You've got a little wooden box that's lovely and engraved and whatnot. It says the name Bobby on it in the Sylvan language, which is a language that Apis speaks. And inside this box are some bone dice. We have got them analysed by Vala, no less, the head of the Wizards Guild in Fondue, and she has discovered that they are bones from a centaur. And they have divinatory powers. Once per day, well, several times per day, but once per day we can roll them, ask them a yes/no question about something that happens in the future. We can ask them if a certain plan will go well, or if something has happened, or if somebody is still okay. Whatever we want, really. It works best if it's a yes/no question. And then the dice will give us visions and tell us essentially weal or woe, or a mixture. And they're a way of telling the future or telling whether a particular plan is a good idea or not. You can use them multiple times a day, but they're only guaranteed to work once per day. After the first time every day that you use them, the second time and more, there is a random chance that they will tell you a random answer. And so you can't really fully trust them after that first one. And that's, I believe, where we pick up today. It was a lot, I know, but hey, that's what 60 episodes of content gets for you. Oh, hey, look at that, it's the end of the video. Don't forget to hit subscribe, see if you can get me to that next arbitrary milestone of 10,000 subscribers. That'd be pretty cool. Thank you.